I never thought I'd find myself staring at someone's hands the way I stared at his. It started innocently enough, the way most life-changing things do. I'd taken a summer job at the marina after graduating college, killing time before my real life was supposed to begin. Whatever that meant. I was living in my cousin's apartment in Portsmouth, working the desk at the harbour office, checking boats in and out, pretending I knew the difference between a jib and a mainsail. That's where I met Caspian. Yes, that was actually his name. Caspian Vale. Like something out of a novel. He was a dock worker, one of the guys who handled the heavy lifting, literally. Tying off boats, hauling equipment, fixing things that broke in the salt air. He had this weathered look about him, like he'd been shaped by the ocean itself. Sun-darkened skin, hair that was constantly wind-tossed. And these hands. God, his hands. The first time I really noticed them was 3 weeks into the job. I'd been fumbling with a particularly stubborn knot on a delivery of new rope. My soft, office-ready fingers were getting absolutely nowhere. I remember feeling frustrated, embarrassed, like I was proving every stereotype about the useless college kid who couldn't do real work. Then he was there, just suddenly beside me, and I caught this scent of salt and something woody, maybe cedar. He didn't say anything at first, just reached past me and started working the knot. I watched his fingers move. These thick, capable fingers with calluses I could see even in the morning light. The rope seemed to just surrender to him. Within seconds, he had it undone. That's when he looked at me for the first time. Really looked at me. His eyes were this impossible blue-green, like shallow water over sand. He smiled, just barely, and said, "Rope will fight you if you fight it. Got to work with it, not against it." I mumbled something stupid. Probably thank you. And he walked away. I stood there for a full minute afterward, staring at my own useless hands, wondering why my heart was beating so fast. I'm not going to lie and say I didn't know I was attracted to men. I'd known since high school, had a couple of awkward experiences in college. Nothing serious. But I'd never felt this immediate, visceral pull toward someone. It wasn't just that Caspian was attractive, though he absolutely was. It was something else. Something in the way he moved through the world with this quiet confidence, this comfort in his own skin, that I'd never managed to find in mine. Over the next few weeks, I found myself manufacturing reasons to be outside, to be near the docks when I knew he'd be working. I'd volunteer to help with inventory in the storage sheds. I'd offer to take messages directly to the dock workers instead of using the radio. Anything to catch glimpses of him, to maybe exchange a few words. He was kind to me, patient in that way you are with someone who's clearly out of their depth. He'd show me how to coil rope properly, how to read the tide charts, which knots were used for what purpose. His teaching style was hands-on, literally. He'd guide my hands through the motions, his rough palms against my skin, and I'd lose all ability to focus on what he was actually saying. I remember one afternoon in early July. The marina was quiet, most of the boats already out for the day. I was supposed to be organizing the office supply closet, but I'd wandered down to the main dock, drawn like always to where Caspian was working. He was replacing some of the weathered planks on the far end of the pier, shirtless in the heat. And I just stood there, watching him work. The way his shoulders moved, the concentration on his face, the sure swing of the hammer. He must have sensed me, because he looked up suddenly and caught me staring. I felt my face go hot. Started to turn away, but he called out, "Hey, desk boy. You know how to hold a board steady?" Desk boy. That's what he'd started calling me, and I should have hated it. Should have felt condescended to, but instead, I loved it. It felt like a nickname, like something intimate between us. I walked over, trying to act casual, and he positioned me holding one end of a long plank while he secured the other. We worked in silence for a while, and I was hyper-aware of everything. The sun on my neck, the smell of the ocean, the sound of his breathing, the way he'd glance at me occasionally to make sure I was holding steady. When we finished, he stood up and stretched, and I watched the muscles in his back shift under his skin. He turned to me and said, "You're getting better at this. Hands are toughening up." He reached out and took my hand, turned it palm up, ran his thumb across the small calluses I'd been developing. It was such a simple gesture, probably meant nothing to him, but I felt it everywhere. My breath caught, and for just a second our eyes met and held. Something passed between us, some current of recognition, and then he let go and looked away. "Good work today," he said, his voice slightly rough, and walked off toward the equipment shed. I stood there on that dock, my hand still tingling where he'd touched it, and realized with absolute certainty that I was falling for him. Not just attracted. Falling. The scary kind of falling where you know there's no going back to who you were before. The problem was I had no idea if he felt anything similar. He was friendly, sure, but he was friendly with everyone. He never talked about his personal life, never mentioned dating anyone. I'd tried to subtly figure out if he was into men, but Caspian was private, in a way that made prying impossible, and I was terrified of misreading things, of making everything awkward, of losing even the small interactions we had. So I did nothing. I just kept showing up, kept finding reasons to be near him, kept storing away every small moment like treasure. The way he'd sometimes bring an extra coffee in the morning and leave it on my desk without a word. The way he'd steady me with a hand on my shoulder when I nearly slipped on the wet dock. The way he'd started calling me by my actual name, Marcus, instead of desk boy, and how it sounded different in his voice than anyone else's. Then came the day that changed everything. Mid-August. One of those brutally hot afternoons where the air feels thick enough to swim through. A shipment had come in wrong, too early, and we were understaffed. I'd volunteered to help unload, desperate to prove I wasn't completely useless, that I could do more than shuffle papers. The work was brutal. Heavy coils of industrial rope, crates of equipment, everything needing to be moved from the delivery truck to the storage shed. Caspian was directing the operation, and I was trying to keep up, trying not to show how much I was struggling. I was hauling one of the rope coils, this massive thing that must have weighed 60 pounds, and I wasn't holding it right. The rough hemp was sliding through my hands too fast, burning. But I was too stubborn to stop, too determined to prove myself. I felt the skin on my palms tearing, but I kept going. Caspian saw. Of course he saw. He was across the dock in seconds, taking the rope from me, his face sharp with concern. "Marcus, what the hell? Let go." I released the rope and looked down at my hands. Both palms were raw, angry red, some spots actually bleeding where the friction had been worst. I felt stupid, embarrassed, like a kid who'd hurt himself trying to show off. "Come on," Caspian said, his voice tight. He grabbed my wrist, carefully avoiding my injured palms, and led me toward the office. I followed, acutely aware of his fingers wrapped around my wrist, the gentle but firm way he was guiding me. Inside, the air conditioning was a shock after the heat outside. He sat me down in the break room and got the first aid kit from under the sink. Then he pulled up a chair directly in front of me, so close our knees were almost touching, and took my right hand in both of his. He worked in silence at first, cleaning the wounds with careful precision. It stung, but I barely noticed. I was too focused on his face, the concentration there, the small furrow between his eyebrows. He was being so gentle, this strong man with his rough hands, treating my injuries like they mattered, like I mattered. "You should have stopped," he said quietly, not looking up. "Should have asked for help." "I wanted to prove I could do it," I admitted, my voice coming out smaller than I intended. He glanced up at that, met my eyes. "You don't have anything to prove. Not to me." Something in the way he said it made my chest tight. He went back to bandaging my right palm, wrapping gauze with practiced efficiency, then reached for my left hand. This one was worse, the burns deeper. He cleaned it even more carefully, and I watched his face the whole time, memorizing every detail. When he finished wrapping it, he didn't let go. He just sat there, holding my bandaged hand in both of his, staring down at it. The silence stretched out, filled with everything unsaid between us. Then he did something that stopped my heart. He lifted my hand and pressed his lips to the bandaged palm. Not a quick peck, but a real kiss. Soft and deliberate. Then he did the same to my other hand. I stopped breathing. The world narrowed to just this. Just us. Just his mouth against my palm and the tenderness of the gesture. He looked up at me, still holding my hands, and his expression was vulnerable in a way I'd never seen before. "I've been wanting to touch you for weeks," he said, his voice rough. "Really touch you. But I wasn't sure if you wanted." "I want," I said immediately, barely able to form words. God, Caspian, I've wanted since the first day. Something shifted in his face, relief and desire mixing together. He let go of my hands and reached up to cup my face instead, his palms rough against my skin. "Your hands are going to hurt for a while," he said, almost smiling, "so I should probably do the touching for both of us." Then he kissed me. Really kissed me. His lips were softer than I'd imagined, and he tasted like coffee and salt air. I made a sound, something between a gasp and a sigh, and felt him smile against my mouth. My bandaged hands came up uselessly, hovering near his shoulders, and he caught them gently, placed them on his chest where I could feel his heart beating as fast as mine. We broke apart eventually, breathing hard. Foreheads pressed together. "I thought I was imagining it," I whispered. "The way you'd look at me sometimes." "You weren't imagining anything," he said. "I've been losing my mind trying to figure out if you were interested or just friendly. You're hard to read, Marcus." I laughed at that, slightly breathless. "I'm hard to read. You're like a locked safe." He pulled back enough to really look at me, and his expression was so open, so honest. "Not with you. I don't want to be locked with you." We stayed there in the break room for a long time, talking in a way we never had before. He told me about growing up in a fishing town further north, about coming out to his family at 17 and having them accept him without question, about moving to Portsmouth 5 years ago for the job, about the small apartment he kept near the water, about how lonely he'd been until I showed up. I told him about my uncertainty, about feeling like I was drifting through life without direction, about taking the marina job as a placeholder, never expecting to find anything real here, about noticing his hands that first day, and being unable to stop noticing everything else about him after that. The afternoon faded into evening. Eventually, someone radioed looking for Caspian, and we had to return to the real world. But everything had changed. He kept finding reasons to touch me as we finished the workday. A hand on my lower back as he passed, fingers brushing mine when he handed me something, a squeeze to my shoulder when he thought no one was looking. That night, he followed me back to my cousin's apartment. We were careful with my injured hands, which made everything slower. more deliberate. He kissed every part of me he could reach, murmuring against my skin about how long he'd wanted this, how good I felt, how perfect. I'd never felt so desired, so seen, so absolutely wanted. Afterward, we lay tangled together in my small bed, the window open to let in the ocean breeze. He held my bandaged hands carefully, kissed each palm again, and I felt something in my chest expand, something warm and terrifying and wonderful. "What are we doing?" I asked into the darkness. "I mean, after summer. I don't even know what I'm doing with my life." He was quiet for a moment, his fingers tracing gentle patterns on my wrist. "What if you stayed? Not because of me, but because you want to. You could work at the marina, or find something else around here. Figure out your life from a place that feels good, instead of running towards something you think you should want." I'd been so focused on the idea that my real life was somewhere else, something else, that it hadn't occurred to me that maybe it was right here, that maybe this job I'd taken as a placeholder, this town I'd moved to temporarily, this man I'd fallen for accidentally, maybe this was exactly where I was supposed to be. "I'd like that," I said. "Staying, figuring it out here. With you." He pulled me closer, pressed a kiss to my temple. "Good. Because I'm not ready to let you go, Marcus. Not even close." The rest of the summer unfolded like a dream. We became inseparable outside of work, and barely separable during it. He taught me everything about the marina, about boats and tides, and the rhythms of the harbour. My hands healed, growing more calloused, more capable. I started to move differently, with more confidence, more purpose. We'd spend evenings on his apartment balcony, watching the sunset over the water, his arm around my shoulders, my head on his chest. We'd talk about everything and nothing, learning each other's histories and hopes and fears. He told me about past relationships that hadn't worked, about thinking he might not find someone who understood him. I told him about feeling like I was always performing, always trying to be what others expected, and how with him, I could just be myself. When summer officially ended and my cousin needed his apartment back, I moved in with Caspian. It felt right, natural, like coming home. I made the marina job permanent, and to my surprise, I was good at it. I liked the work, liked the community, liked the life we were building. My parents were confused at first, couldn't understand why I'd stay in a small coastal town working at a marina instead of pursuing something they considered more ambitious. But when they visited in October and saw me and Caspian together, saw how happy I was, they started to understand. My mum pulled me aside and said I looked different, lighter, like I'd finally stopped carrying something heavy. She was right. I had stopped carrying the weight of other people's expectations, the burden of trying to force myself into a life that didn't fit. With Caspian, I'd found something I didn't even know I was looking for. Not just love, though it was definitely that, but a sense of belonging, of purpose, of home. It's been 2 years now. We're still at the marina, still in the apartment by the water. We've talked about maybe buying a small house, maybe getting a dog, maybe a lot of things. But we're in no rush. We're good at taking things as they come, working with the current instead of against it. I still think about that day with the rope, the way my hands burned, the way he kissed each palm with such tenderness. Those scars healed, but I got new ones. The good kind, the kind you earn from work you care about. My hands look different now, rougher, stronger, more like his. Sometimes I'll catch him looking at them and he'll smile this private smile and reach out to take one, press it to his lips like he did that first time. It's become our thing, this gesture of tenderness between us, a reminder of where we started, of the moment everything changed. People at the marina call us the dock couple now, though Caspian rolls his eyes at the nickname. We're just part of the landscape here, part of the daily rhythm of the harbour. It's a simple life. Maybe not what I imagined for myself back in college, but it's mine. It's ours. And it's absolutely perfect. Last week, a new kid started working the desk, fresh out of college, clearly out of his element. I watched Caspian show him how to tie a proper bowline, patient and encouraging. And I saw the kid watching Caspian's hands the way I used to. I felt a flash of something. Maybe jealousy, but then Caspian looked over at me and winked. And I knew. I knew that what we have is solid, real, unshakable. That night, back at home, I was washing dishes and he came up behind me, wrapped his arms around my waist, pressed a kiss to the back of my neck. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. I turned in his arms, looked at this man who'd somehow become my entire world. "That I'm grateful," I said, "for rope burns and dock work and you. Especially you." He smiled, that soft smile that's just for me, and kissed me slow and deep. When we broke apart, he took my hands, turned them palm up, and kissed each one. "These hands," he said, "I love what they've become. Strong and capable and mine." "Yours," I agreed, "always yours." And standing there in our kitchen, the ocean breeze coming through the window, his hands holding mine, I felt completely, utterly home. This was my life. The one I'd stumbled into accidentally. The one I'd never planned for. And it was everything I never knew I needed. Sometimes the best things find you when you stop looking, when you let yourself be open to possibility, when you're brave enough to reach for something real, even when your hands are shaking. Caspian taught me that. He taught me to work with the current, not against it, to be gentle with myself and fierce in my loving, to build a life that feels true instead of impressive. I never expected to find love at a marina, never expected a dock worker with weathered hands and an unusual name to become the center of my universe. But that's the thing about love, real love. It doesn't care about your expectations or your plans. It just shows up one day, helps you with a stubborn knot, and changes everything. My hands still bear the faint scars from those rope burns, barely visible now, but still there if you know where to look. Caspian traces them sometimes, these thin white lines across my palms, and tells me they're beautiful. Battle scars, he calls them. Evidence of the day we stopped pretending, stopped holding back, stopped being afraid. He's right. They are beautiful. Not the scars themselves, but what they represent. The moment I stopped trying to prove something and just let myself be vulnerable. The moment he showed me that tenderness and strength aren't opposites but partners. The moment we both chose honesty over safety and found something extraordinary. So yeah, the dock worker kissed my burned palms, and I fell completely, irreversibly in love. Best thing that ever happened to me.